Hello guys, welcome to this video. So in this video, I will show you a powerful asynchronous state management library for React.js application. It is specifically useful for caching your data when you're making HTTP request to fetch some data fetching from a URL. So once you fetch the data, it will store the data in the cache, and in the subsequent request, it will return the data from the cache. It will not make redundant HTTP request. So this, as you can see, we are using the JSONPlaceholder API and fetching some data right here. And for the very first time, it will make the HTTP request using Axios, and then in the subsequent request it will store the data in the cache, and it will not make the subsequent HTTP request. So you can see it only for the very first time it is returning the JSON data, and we are displaying it, storing it in cache. So it automatically does that. The command is very simple: npm i tanstack react query. Tanstack is the company name and React query is the library. Almost it has 5 million weekly downloads, so it's a pretty popular package. So now I'll be showing you how to configure this. So just make a simple functional app component in React.js, and then we will instantiate a new instance of query client in React query. So for configuring it, we need to declare a new instance of this query client class. This will be coming from the React query, if you see, automatically imported. So we just need to initialize this, and after initializing it inside our app level component, we need to declare the hook which will be coming from this React query. The hook name is use query. This is a hook. It will be imported, if you see, from again React query, and this hook actually takes some options. First, it takes two options. First is the query key. So in this case, we are fetching the post. So this can be any name, because in this case, we are fetching the post. We are just writing in single quotes post. This is a key name. And the second property it takes is a query function. So the function responsible for fetching this data. So I will just assign this function fetch post, which will be responsible. So it actually gives you three things. First is the actual data, which will be returned after the HTTP request is successful, and it will store it in the cache automatically if any sort of error take place or is loading. So the is loading is a Boolean parameter. Whether the data is fetched or not, it will return. And these three variables are returned automatically. And now we can define this function of fetch post, which will be responsible for fetching the post. So it will be a simple fetch call, Axios call, to fetch the data, and we'll be saying await. And for this purpose, we will be using the Axios package, which is actually a simple HTTP client for fetching the data from the URL. And inside this Axios package, we have a get method, which will make a simple get call to this endpoint, which is https JSON placeholder dot typocode dot com slash post. So this will return our data, so I can just console log it and just return the data. So after you do this, so if I refresh the application and just refresh now, you will see in the console. So yeah, so once you make the query client, we need to wrap our app level component to this query client provider. So one more step to do before we do the data fetching. So right, this is your root component right here. If you see, we actually need to wrap everything. This, whatever is your component. So in my case, it's an app level component. So we just need to wrap everything. So I will just create a root component, and inside this, I will wrap everything in this query client provider. So this will be coming from, if you see, again it will be coming from query client provider React query. So you need to wrap everything your app component in this. Here we will be providing the client that we configured, which is query client, and then we need to export default this component, which is root. So this is our actual component where the data fetching is taking place. So we are just wrapping this inside your query client provider. And if you now refresh, so now if you see the data will be returned to us. So console log message, and the post contains each property, 4 properties. So we need to display this now. So the displaying process is very simple. Right inside your div section. So once we get the data, this data will be present in this data property. So now to actually display this, so you'll have a div section where we'll be displaying the data, which will be post, and we'll just be looping data.map. It's an array. So for each post, so you'll have a li tag, which I will just give it a key parameter, which is post.id. Post.title, and then we will print out the post.body. I think just made a typo mistake. So if you refresh now, the data will now display in the cannot read properties of undefined reading map. So we are just using this data property right here. So if you now see, the post will show up. And also we need to make sure that we use these two variables, error and is loading. So we just need to make sure that if any sort of error take place, then we can show these error messages. And if is loading is also true, so these two variables are also returned from this request. So if any sort of error take place, then we are showing it as an error occurred. And if the data is loading, then we can even show this loading screen as well. So this library handles all these processes in a very systematical way. So now if you refresh the page, you will see the data will be coming from the API, and you can see the data. Now, if you want to check for these error messages, so if I make a mistake in the URL, so if I change this URL, now if you see this error message appearing, the thing about this library is that it will keep on making the request. If you see in the console, it is making the request, and after 4 requests, it will show you this error message that an error occurred, network error. So if I again change it to the correct URL, it will show you this loading screen, and then it will show the actual post. So the data fetching will only be done for the very first time, and after subsequent request will be cached. So this is actually a very great way of data fetching. You every time you don't want to make the HTTP request. So once the data is returned, we store this data inside the cache. So this caching is automatically done by using React query. So this is the advantage of using these libraries inside for data fetching purposes. So thank you very much for watching this video, and do check out my website as well, freemediatools.com, which contains thousands of tools regarding audio, video, and image. And I will be seeing you in the next video.